Hey, Chris, we're at number 13, lucky number 13 of the Reasonable Measures podcast.
Hey, Tim, it's great to be here.
We've been a little busy, I think is the right word, right? You've been flying all over the place. I'm raising money. And unfortunately, Reasonable Measures podcast took a little back seat at the early part of the year. So it's great to be back, man. I've actually missed this, and we're going to kind of double down and knock out some episodes here. And so today we're going to hit on one case, I think rather quickly, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about some market insights, given both of our, sort of first quarter activities, you on the conference circuit, and me between, investors and customers. And so some good stuff to catch up on there. So the case we're going to talk about today is a case that we've been talking about in 2024 because it was a big deal, $604.9 million, a decision against Phillips 66 in favor of Propel Fuels. And so some big news was that just last week, 2 weeks ago, in terms of enhanced damages. And so first, let me start by saying, I went and read this and I see, treble damages, as in treble. And so I'm sort of thinking in my head, isn't it triple damages? And you tell me, well, yes, it is. It's the same thing.
So it's the same thing.
Let's back up. I'm coming from the patent space and thinking, willful patent infringement, right? And in willful patent infringement, you can seek triple the damages. And so for years and years and years, that was the word I've always heard and known. And now this is the first time as the non-lawyer in this relationship, it's like treble damages. What is this? And so anyway,
it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. So maybe just walk us through a little bit about what these enhanced damages are, what they mean. And let's jump into the case and learn a little bit more.
Sure. And it's kind of like a classic case of translating English to English. But yeah, the jury awarded that $605 million, if you want to average the number, as compensating Propel for their losses. And $600 million, I mean, to you and me, that's already a substantial amount of money. But in cases where there's willful and malicious conduct by the losing party, the judge has the ability, if they so choose, to triple the damages. So go from 600 million up to 1.8 billion potentially. Okay. And that's exactly what happened here about a week or two ago, where they said that the conduct from the Phillips 66 side was so bad that they added an additional 2 times the damages to bring it up to 3 times the original amount. It honestly, it doesn't surprise me. Like if you read back at what happened in the case and the conduct that Phillips 66 did, this personally does not surprise me at all. But it's a huge, huge number. And last year we talked about the Appian case being the high water mark at $2 billion. Yeah. This comes mighty close to that. Now, Appian was knocked down on appeal and will have to have a new trial, but still you're in that same kind of approaching 2 billion point, which is real money. Substantial.
So going back to the case itself, this was sort of like one of these classic cases where you see you have a power dynamic in the imbalance, right? You've got a small startup, although they weren't that small. Then you got Phillips 66. And so if memory serves me, it's basically a case where there was a relationship that was developing around an acquisition or an investment. Yeah.
That's right. This is all due diligence to be acquired by Phillips 66.
Got it.
And they were talking for a year. Like this is not a quick conversation.
Right. And so this is just one of those topics you see it a lot, and sympathetic to Propel, as usually the person in the weaker part of the power dynamic in these conversations. You just got to be super careful. You have to assume that this deal's not going to close, right? And all of this information you just shared with them is, going to be in their possession post close, right? Or post, deal blowing up in this case, right? So it does sort of beg the question of like, what should you be doing in order to, manage that risk, knowing that, is part of the thinking here that like share, again, something I've talked about, but share as little as possible until you absolutely have to, like share the really important stuff after the deal's closed. I know that's a strategy. I guess any like practical thoughts are helpful.
And I think that Propel actually did things correctly here, where they specifically identified 88 trade secrets. So they were super specific and had great particularity, like we always talk about.
Yeah.
There was an NDA governing the M&A due diligence process, and it just felt like Propel did everything they reasonably could. And they were developing this technology and these products for 13 years or so, and we're talking with Phillips for a whole year. And it's kind of striking that if Phillips terminated the discussion, and then not the next month, not the next year, but the very next business day, Phillips told the California regulators that they were launching a new product. Like literally the next business day. Like they didn't even wait for the weekend.
Like, let's give it a week next time, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Like, at least let the dust settle a little bit, but they couldn't wait. And again, that all goes to this perception that Phillips was acting in a way that was not honorable or right, and that led to tripling the damages up to a staggering amount of money.
Amazing. Well, clearly at those numbers, it's going to be appealed, or practically at any substantial number.
It's guaranteed to be appealed. It'll be interesting to see what the grounds for appeal will be. This is much too recent, so we don't have visibility there. But certainly with this kind of damages, an appeal or some kind of a settlement is guaranteed, like one of those two. But it'll be definitely interesting to watch. But I think Propel did a pretty solid job of knowing what they had, taking measures to protect it, and they were dealing with what should have been a great M&A partner, but things changed in the relationship.
Yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, great. I think like just to sort of echo that last point, just the simple fact that they went to some extent, during as the relationship was playing out to define the trade secrets. That's as strong of a risk mitigation step as you can take. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it wasn't a few trade secrets, like they articulated 88 or so. Like it's a large number of specific trade secrets that they were sharing as part of this due diligence process. So I think they did a pretty solid job as it shows.
So the second topic is you've been out on the conference circuit for the last, I don't know, couple months, I guess, back and forth, but in London and Los Angeles. So would love to kind of just get a little flavor for what's going on out there in the conference world. So love to hear a little bit about both the events.
Well, it really feels like we're kind of turning a corner on trade secrets, where the barrier to get people interested seems a lot easier. And especially with these kind of damages that we're seeing, it's not as shocking as it used to be. And now it's like, if it's 100 million or 200 million, it's kind of boring, almost like, another 100 million, no big deal. And it's only when you reach, like the Propel level or the Appian level that people still find it kind of shocking. But it just feels like there's more acceptance of trade secrets as being an actual viable IP strategy. We often joke about trade secrets can be plan A and are no longer plan B. And we've been saying that for a few years, and it finally feels like that's sinking in with the people that I meet and talk to at these conferences.
Yeah, let's say sort of 2 years since we've been on the conference scene, right? And well, 2 years since there's been like dedicated trade secret conferences, right? That's, I think, how new this whole space is. And yeah, it's like a night and day difference, right? In terms of the perceived issues or how people understand the issues, understand the risk. There maybe the convergence of the point of view that like actually writing stuff down is not a bad idea, and so is it any like key takeaways at the London meeting? I know that was that 100% trade secret based? Yeah.
That was totally trade secret. The California one was a mix of all IP. Yeah, I think, like you said, we're not getting the same kind of pushback maybe as before. It used to be that people were scared or nervous to document anything. It feels like that's kind of more or less a resolved issue by now.
Yeah.
Especially, like given Propel documented 88 trade secrets. So again, it just feels like people are starting to really view this as an asset and a valuable asset that needs protection. And the questions now are more around, so what do we actually do? Like tomorrow morning, if you go into the office, what kind of discrete steps make sense, for someone and their organization versus before, which was people weren't even sure, should they do anything? Like, should they just, wait or hide in the sand or, they weren't even clear that taking action was necessary. And it feels like now people want to do something. And it's just a matter of, picking the right step as part of your IP strategy to move the ball forward.
Right. So one of the sort of third little bucket to talk about today is one of the little bit like framework. And so, we're constantly talking to customers. And last week I just had three amazing, it was like back to back. It was over the course of 2 days. And three amazing sort of Fortune 100 conversations, and talking, head of IP level, some of the technology folks, that run the IP tech platforms, and so some really interesting people, and so where I kind of fell back, and so it's not wanting to give away too much, semiconductor materials company and pharma, right? So those are sort of the three. And it's really interesting that the semiconductor side is like clearly identified the problem and clearly ready for a solution, right? Like even to the extent of the IP organization now has KPIs around trade secrets, which it's like, wow, like we don't hear KPIs and trade secrets, in the same sentence, every day, right? So I was like, wow, this is incredible. First pharma company, the conversation was fantastic. And one of the people at the table even had trade secrets in their title, right? So clearly a company that has identified the problem, but is not ready to sort of pull the trigger tomorrow because there's still like cultural barriers, right? Like, how are we going to really roll this out? Like, how do we implement a plan that's like cohesive amongst all these different businesses and so forth and so on? So you can really see, okay, good, identify the problem, but it's going to take time in order to figure out how to implement something like this across a company that doesn't really think in trade secret think, right? But management has sort of defined this as hey, this is important. And then the third one was like, I'll just say the executive at the table started the conversation by saying roughly, we don't really have trade secrets. It's like,
Yes, you do.
I beg to differ, but I don't want to argue with a potential customer. So that, I think if you sort of think about this as, on a technology adoption curve, yeah, that last person would be sort of in the laggard category or sort of very late adopter category. But yeah, what I think after sort of thinking about those conversations, I think what we're seeing is, had that been even 1 year ago, right? That company that was talking about KPIs, and trade secrets, they would have still been in the we're trying to figure out what to do category, right? So you do sort of feel like there's this shift towards action, super cool. So yeah. Okay. Any parting thoughts for number 13?
No, I think that's good. I mean, I'm seeing the same thing where, the tides are changing, and it just seems like these conversations are getting easier and easier to have as people realize the value and the importance of trade secrets. So it's a really encouraging trend, and I think we've been on the right path all along. Maybe a little bit early, but it's good to see the market catch up to us.
Yeah. All right, Chris. Good. We'll see you on the other side. See you,
Okay,
man.
thanks, Tim.
Later.
Catch you later.